Hello, all you wastelanders. This is Brett with Fond Radio, bringing you all your favorite oldies, as always. But before we get to that, we have Cody and Joe with us in studio tonight, and I'd love to hear what they've been up to. So let's start with Cody. What you had this week?
Oh man. Oh man. Actually a lot and a little. I'll do two little quick plugs here. One is I have been playing a video game finally. I don't feel like one has in a while that has like captured me in enough that I'm actually like losing sleep on nights when I should be sleeping, but I keep playing the game late at night. And that has been the Danganronpa series for Justin that I purchased a while ago on the first game, which is an interesting story. It's basically like there's 15 high school kids locked in a building, and you're forced to kill one of the other high school students to escape. But if the other high school kids who are alive find out that you are the killer, then you are killed. So it's like you have to make a play to get out, but if the other group knows you made the play or can prove you made the play, then you're killed as well, and it dwindles down to the next people. So you as the main character are not really like committing the crimes though so far at least. I've just been trying to help solve them, but we went from 15 down to I think I'm at six people left alive now. So
Hmm.
it's getting kind of interesting where that's at. So that's been fun. And then second thing I'll just do a quick shout out for is gardening. Spent some
Woo!
time out in the gardens last few days this week and redoing my giant berry patches. I tore all my fencing out today and all my stakes, and I'm completely redoing it from scratch. And it was actually just funny because Boston came out to help me today, and we put up like 1/4, like one of the two long walls on the fence. And I was getting ready to come up here and looked out the window, and I saw a baby bunny like go through where the other fences used to be, and I was like, "You son of a bitch!" So Karen went out and chased him out there, and she got him out of the garden. And then she said she saw five bunnies sitting in the neighbor's yard, like staring towards my garden. And I was like, "You bastards!"
They're plotting.
They're probably
Write it
chewing on it
down.
as we speak, I'm sure. So, but yeah, lots of projects outside I'm waiting to get into here.
Nice. What do you, Joe?
I've been sick, which I don't recommend.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Other than that, I've watched a couple interesting movies recently. One of them is one called All of Us Strangers, which stars Andrew Scott, who people may know either as Jim Moriarty from the Sherlock BBC series or as the hot priest from the series Fleabag, which is one of the greatest series ever created. But this movie is, according to Wikipedia, it's a romantic fantasy film. But Andrew Scott plays a screenwriter who's living by himself in this apartment building where there only seems to be one other person living there. And he kind of like forms a relationship with that person. And that story is intercut with scenes of him going to visit his parents in his childhood home. The twist being that we learn fairly early on that his parents are dead.
Oh,
Hmm.
His parents died, I believe, when he was 12, and somehow he is able to go and like spend time with them as a 40 something adult, but they still appear as they did when he was a child. Um,
oh, I thought you
and
meant he was just visiting bodies.
no, no, like they're actually uh he's actually able to go and interact with them, and
Hmm,
they it's has like a relationship with them. So
gross.
I won't give any kind of spoilers as to what the details of how that happens, but it's a really beautifully shot movie, and has a lot of emotional impact I felt. So I think that's on Max now, I want to say, but I would recommend checking that out. Also, more recently watched a movie called Dream Scenario, which stars the one and only Nicolas Cage, and it also has a fantastical premise. In this movie, Nicolas Cage plays a college professor. I think he's like an anthropologist or something, but he's just like a normal person and he starts appearing in people's dreams. And like somehow over like a relatively short time span, it just kind of turns out that people around the world are all dreaming of the same actual person that exists. But he is not, it's not like a Freddy Krueger scenario where he's like invading people's dreams. Like he's not like actually consciously a participant in this, but it's just people just see like a version of him in their dreams, and he becomes like a worldwide celebrity because everybody is just seeing this guy in their dreams. So it's kind of a silly premise, and I mean Nicolas Cage is amazing as always, both at being ridiculous, but this movie also has kind of a more dramatic undercurrent, and I think he handles the more, emotional, dramatic stuff just as well as the silliness. So I would recommend that movie as well. It's pretty different from anything I've seen before.
Hmm.
And that's about all I've been up to.
That sounds like it could be a Nicolas Cage movie for sure.
Oh, it definitely is.
Back to one of the things you mentioned at the early part there of that little speech. Where did you get chlamydia? I was just curious.
I visited Australia, and I don't know if you know this, but something on the order of like 80% of koala bears have chlamydia.
Really?
This is a true fact. So I had sex with a koala. I mean, I hugged a koala, and somehow it was transmitted.
Did the
Somehow,
koala bears?
It got transmitted to my land down under.
somehow the chlamydia returned.
Did they vaguely resemble the members of AC/DC? Just asking.
No, it was actually I had an orgy with the members of the band Men at Work.
Okay, so you in fact did not experience the jack with them. Just making sure. All right.
No. Oh,
Okay.
you did it.
Ah.
Brad, what have you been up to?
Hey, Brett.
Oh, it's me. My wife and I, since the last time I've been here, we binged through a show on Netflix called Dead Boy Detectives. Which is kind of amusing to us because there was a show called Lockwood and Co, which we enjoyed quite a bit, and they canceled that show after one season despite it being a pretty good show, and they have this new show that feels like they're trying to fill that spot with something. I don't know what behind the scenes exactly, but if that's actually they're actually trying to replace it or what, but has many kind of similar themes, and just like the character kind of set is kind of similar, but it was pretty fun. It essentially it's a pair of ghosts who like have eluded death and are now like living out their afterlives like still on Earth, and they're solving mysteries. So it's like a reverse Scooby-Doo scenario. But it's pretty fun. It's kind of quirky. The characters are really pretty good and enjoyable. I had a bit of an issue with it. It feels like half of the show is green screened and like for no reason. Like they'd be like in an apartment scenario, like a scene with in an apartment, and like it feels green screened, and you're like, why was this not shot in a physical location? I don't know. There's like a weird visual thing going on there. Maybe it wasn't it. It's just something about the way they filmed it. I don't know, but
maybe they shot it in the volume.
I don't know what that is.
It's what they used to film The Mandalorian. They basically there's like a giant screen that's like actually behind the actors while they're filming it. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know, but I think a lot of
those aren't
a
shot
lot
on
of other
scene?
productions are using that now. What's that?
Those aren't shot on set at the Mandalorian?
No.
What? Was Ahsoka?
I think most of the Star Wars stuff is shot on the volume.
I think they travel to the planets. I don't think you're right on that.
Yeah.
Sorry, they're all shot on location.
That's
on planets in a galaxy far, far away. Anyway, I didn't mean to hijack that, Brad. I'm sorry.
So that's good. I was done with my thought on that. It's a pretty fun show. If that sounds like I might recommend it, but it wasn't like an amazing show. But
It's not like made by the same people as the other show, is it?
I didn't look into that.
Okay.
It is
Because
so
that
it
would
is.
be really pointless if
I
they.
am
Yeah.
kind of aware of this. It's actually was created by Neil Gaiman.
Oh,
Oh.
And I believe it is actually like a spin-off of the Sandman series that is also on
oh, I did hear
Netflix.
that. Yes, I heard that as well.
Oh, that was on my list. I'll never get to, but I wanted to.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet either, but I've heard it's good.
Hmm. So, all right, let's move into our discussion here. We are here tonight to follow up with we did a first impressions of the first episode of the Fallout series on Amazon Prime. And we're here tonight to follow up and review the remainder of the series on that and just give our thoughts on that. And I guess let's just dive into it here. So, yeah, we won't. I don't think there's any need to rehash the first episode at all. If you're interested in listening to that, go back and find that. It was like 3 episodes ago in our library. But I guess as an opening question, uh, how did you feel about just I guess I'm not sure where to start with this. Let's start with just like how did the season progress for you? Like did you feel like you were engaged the whole way with it? Were there any just kind of general thoughts on how the series unfolded out?
That's a really good question. I think I have some really oddly weird and mixed deep thoughts on the rest of this season,
Ooh.
which I don't know if that's good or bad, actually, Joe. So I don't know. I felt like Lucy's story intrigued me the rest of the way. I don't know that I could say that for all of the characters, though. And maybe that's by design, maybe that's not. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know.
I will say, just as far as engagement, I was a little concerned. So I mean, I loved episode 1. I really liked episode 2. Episode 3 had me concerned because that was the episode where the head gets eaten by the gulper, which is like the giant aquatic lizard thing.
The axolotl.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
lot.
but like nothing really happens in that entire episode.
Oh.
Like it's literally an hour just spent like trying to get the head back from the thing, like, and it just didn't feel like it really progressed anything in terms of the overall plot.
Hmm.
But after that episode, I kind of got re-engaged and I got invested in a lot of what happened. I mean, I don't want to get into it right now, but I will kind of echo what Cody said as far as the fact that not all of the characters were very engaging or interesting to me. But I will say, as overall, as like the show overall, I did really, I enjoyed it. I was curious to see where things were going most of the time. And yeah, I guess that's all I'll say about that for now.
All right. Uh yeah, I one thing that I noted on it, so like you mentioned episode 3 as not really moving the plot, and I agree with that. It didn't really have a lot as far as development there, but I also found episode 3 was like the most entertaining episode. Like it for me, it had by far the most like quotable lines in the whole series. Like they all came from that one episode, basically. Um, and but what I noted on it was like it seems like starting with like the latter half of episode 4 through the end of the series, it seemed to have lost whether it was intentionally or just the way it came out. It was there was less humor and it was more like straight laced drama. So like the last 4 episodes, there certainly were some, a bit of humor in there, but it was like less quotable and less like straight up goofy in places, which wasn't, and I'm not saying it was a bad thing. It was just something I noticed, and I wasn't sure if that was intentional or if perhaps like some of those episodes have been written by a different writing team or how that came out. But
It does look like, I'm looking at the Wikipedia right now. It does look like actually the first 3 episodes were written by the same team and the others were not.
no,
I don't know if I really agree with you though. I mean, I guess to an extent, I do think that after, that point, they do kind of focus in more on like the plot.
Mm,
And I think there are some kind of like heavy, dark themes that they explore more, but I still felt like there was a decent amount of humor throughout. I mean, especially there's kind of a series of cameos from, well-known comedic performers that I
mm,
think added a decent amount of levity to the proceedings. So, I mean, I guess maybe they don't feel quite as wacky as the first couple episodes, but I didn't feel like it was like a huge tonal shift to the point where it like felt like a different series or anything to me.
mhm. It could have been in part on for me. Like I said, I really thought episode 3 was like really entertaining from a writing perspective. So maybe it was just like 3 like was so humor heavy for me that the rest of that that kind of
Yeah.
felt like a step in a different direction. But
I mean, they do start to focus in a little more on like trying to advance plot along. I feel like the further the series goes, so I don't know if they had a bit of a uh, like necessity of trying to like shove the story along, maybe at the cost of some of that writing you're talking about from earlier on. I mean, that could be
mm,
maybe part of it. I don't know. I also don't know that they have necessarily given us enough of the story either, but that's me. So, whoop, I said it. I said it.
um, you guys mentioned characters and their arcs a bit. Yeah, is there any way that you want to like just kind of highlight like good or bad, indifferent characters you liked to see, the ones you didn't?
Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna start with Honcho because he never came back, which is trying to get my justice for Honcho meme to fit in my window. It's just not happening right now. But
I mean, they missed an opportunity because if he had taken possession of the asset at any point, he could have been the head honcho.
oh,
Ooh,
that would have been good.
nice. Yeah.
Dang, I should have, yeah, put him on some of that formaldehyde stuff.
I mean, okay, so I absolutely loved Ella Purnell as Lucy. I mean, I know that this is kind of like they set up the three different characters to follow along their journey, but Lucy feels like she is really the main protagonist.
Mhm.
And I think she just like she really captures the feeling of a protagonist. I mean, it's funny to say this because in the Fallout games until Fallout 4, like the player character is always silent. And then in Fallout 4, there's actually like a voice actor doing it, but I feel like she captures what I would imagine an actual like vault dweller emerging from their vault into the world, feeling like, like we in the first episode, we see that montage of like all of her basically special abilities that she's developed. And like throughout the series, like she is physically capable, but she also just has this like naivete and like persistent optimism about her. Like she just really wants to believe that like everybody's inherently good. And I thought it was a lot of fun over the course of the season, just seeing her kind of get thrown into all these different terrible scenarios and having to like cope with the harsh realities of the world.
Mm.
And I just think the actress was just phenomenal at portraying all that.
Yeah, it's really fun because usually that those kind of character qualities, like personality qualities, rarely go with a person who is actually skilled in what
Yeah.
they're doing. So that was fun to watch. And that you had, Cody?
No, just again, like obviously she's the main character, but I think she does go through a bit more progression than we see. She towards the latter episodes, maybe like 6, 7, 8, she's starting to get into situations where even she's kind of like shaking her head, like, God damn it, this is even worse than the situation I was in beforehand, and like kind of is, she is being changed a little bit as a person, which I think needed to happen, and she's seeing like the dark side of the world that she didn't see in those early episodes, but she still does maybe have a little bit of that optimism. Maybe not after episode 8. I don't know. Maybe there is, but
Well, I
see.
think maybe we'll see that, but
Mm,
I think there's still some of that in there.
mm.
I mean, I guess we might as well talk about the kind of three main characters. We also have
Honcho.
Walton Goggins as
Oh,
the Ghoul slash Cooper Howard, and I think he's great as well. I mean, Walton Goggins is an actor who has really become a favorite of mine over the past several years. I probably mentioned in our first episode about this series that he has an amazing role on The Righteous Gemstones. And he's just someone who, anytime he shows up, like you just know he's going to be good. And I think what impressed me most about him on this show is the fact that he's playing the same character, but it is like two very different parts of this character. You know, we see all these flashbacks to where he is Cooper Howard, the actor, and kind of dealing with, being a celebrity, but also being a father and this increasingly looming possibility of war and like decisions that he has to make to try to, protect his family from that. And there's all this stuff in the past that's really interesting. And then we get him as the Ghoul 219 years later, and he's become, kind of hardened and grizzled in all this time. And um I think he wants to be seen as having lost his humanity, or at least most of his humanity, but by the end of the series we see that maybe, that is not actually the case, that there is some Cooper Howard left in there. But I mean, I think he does a lot of interesting stuff dramatically, but I also just think he's a lot of fun in this role, just especially as the Ghoul over the course of the series, just being this kind of wisecracking, grizzled old cowboy.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a great point that you bring up that he's basically playing two characters, really. Like
Yeah.
in the way that the differences in personality, uh it's nearly two different characters, and I think he does both of them perfectly. Like they're both really well done.
all right.
Cody, is this where you start to be wrong?
Yep. I liked the Cooper parts. I could have used even a little more Cooper, I think, in the back, which we did get that like timeline back in the past, which is what I said I wanted after episode one. The Ghoul still never really hit all the way for me, even by the end of this series. I can't speak, obviously, because I haven't experienced, nor has anybody, a 200-year jump in your life when you're like, hey, this is who I am now versus who I used to be. But I just didn't buy that it was the same person entirely. The Ghoul, I felt, just made some kind of questionable, assholey decisions throughout the series, which is cool as like the ghoulish cowboy, but is not really Cooper Howard, who was very like family man. I hate the flashy parts of Hollywood and society, and this is like what I stand for in America and all these things. And I get probably supposed to be somewhat jaded from what played out with his wife and ergo his family and what happened with the world and everything. But I don't know, it just seems like as someone who was a father and then also like had the characteristics that he had in the past, like the way he treats Lucy through the show, I didn't entirely buy, I would say. Um, I don't know. He didn't. I love the actor as well, but he didn't feel entirely consistent to me. I don't know. I just wish he, as a character, would have
I
been
mean,
more one way versus both ways.
I think that's the point though, is that the Ghoul is him after spending 200 plus years having lost his family, and like he has lost a lot of his humanity. But I thought it was interesting. I mean, we see these like small moments that hint at the fact that there is still some of that there. Like
Yeah, like
I
he has
think the first
compassion
one
on that
is,
other ghoul.
yeah,
Even.
or like even like he uses a stim pack to heal the dog,
Mm,
which actually I thought that was great because then we get that flashback to Cooper Howard and the whole thing about how they say dogs aren't allowed in the vaults. And he
mm,
thinks that's like monstrous. So I loved how they tied that back together. Um,
But again, that was also a scene after he had like more or less been like, it ain't my dog, like twice in the show and like didn't care for the dog. So yes and no.
Yeah, because well, that's what I was saying. I feel like
It's
outwardly,
inconsistent. That's what I was saying.
I don't
Like,
think it's inconsistent.
does
I
he have
think,
compassion for dogs or doesn't he? Because you just said two different things.
listen, I
You can't
love
be
my
like, I
dog more
don't
than
care
most.
about, literally say, I don't care about the dog, and then also be like, but he used a stim pack on the dog to help it. Okay, so does he like dogs or doesn't he?
I don't know that he meant that he didn't care about the dog. I think he's trying to portray himself a certain way to the world and also probably trying to tell himself that, but he can't help. The old Cooper Howard is still in there. I mean,
Is it?
I think that sort of conflict is more interesting than if he was still just like, super loving family man Cooper Howard.
As a
But then,
character, yes, but
yeah,
I
yeah.
just,
Well,
I,
what
no,
what are
I'm
we
saying,
talking
no,
about?
I'm saying that as a ghoul character, yes, I think that would be more interesting, but he's not the ghoul. He's Cooper Howard as the ghoul. That's my point. What's his whole motivation in the world?
We actually don't know that.
I'm
Yeah, we
asking,
don't really
yes.
know
What do
that.
you think his motivation is in this world that he lives in?
I mean, by the end of the series, we realize that he thinks that his family might possibly still be alive.
Okay. What else do you think was
Um,
driving him prior to that realization?
I don't know if he really had a whole lot driving him other than just
Would
staying
it be safe to
alive.
say there was some anger in there? Maybe some sadness? Maybe some cynicism at the world for what he perceived as being lost in his
Yes,
own
and these are
life?
all things that are portrayed
And
in a
all of those things are reasons why he therefore should have helped a lonely daughter who is trying to find her father, a la him, but he doesn't. He treats her like shit and handcuffs her
except
and doesn't
okay,
give her water
okay,
and drags her around and feeds her to monsters.
but by the
But
but by the end of the season,
yes, in episode 8, when he's like,
they are
wait, I'm
working
not an asshole.
together, and it seems like he has regained some of that humanity. And he basically at that point, it feels like kind of a like fatherly relationship with her. I feel
More
like
towards
by
the
the
end,
end.
yes. Episode
And
8, I
it seems
agree.
like he's inviting her to, continue on and keep working with him. Like it
Hopefully not
seems
in
like he's
handcuffs.
interested in maintaining that relationship.
I mean, agreed, but I feel
That's
like
growth.
the
That's
real
him finding his humanity and a reason to not be the embittered asshole again.
that's not growth, that's
I
reverting to
swear to
what he
God,
should have
Cody,
been like the whole
considering
series.
considering you have a at least
Here
one
we go.
master's degree in English, like I feel like you often just
Yeah, they used to teach us in
display,
classes how to write characters, so they should
yeah,
take
and
note of
it's all
that.
over the screen
Showrunners
in
and
those
writers for this
characters.
show, take note of that. Talk to us off air if you need help.
I mean, the most like complex characters are more interesting.
True. Not the least inconsistent characters. I agree. Nice job. Next up, who do we got? Maximus?
Oh, you mean the actual worst part of this show?
No.
Oh my God, I fucking hated this guy. Like in our first episode, I voiced some concerns that I didn't know if the actor was just bad or if the character was badly written or what. I mean, if you want to talk about inconsistent, what were this guy's motivations throughout the series?
I don't know, man.
Like, what is he doing?
He likes fuzzy slippers and junk food. I don't know.
Like, like, it makes no sense. And it drove me crazy. Like, who? I mean, starting with,
Ooh.
so he was literally raised by the Brotherhood of Steel. Like we keep seeing this flashback to when he was, a pretty young child and his home is destroyed.
Well, the refrigerator raised him for a little bit, but
No, I
right
mean
after that.
he learned that trick from Indiana Jones. Um, but this brother, we see this flashback where this Brotherhood of Steel knight in their power armor like is ostensibly rescuing him. The Brotherhood of Steel is like an organization that basically exists to raise soldiers and also recover and use technology. Maximus has been raised by this organization since he was a wee little boy, and he is the biggest fucking idiot on earth. He seems to have like no like physical combat or like practical like technological skills. Like it doesn't add up at all. Like it makes no sense that he has been raised by the Brotherhood of Steel and he is this much of a dingleberry.
He feels like someone who just walked in off the street
Yeah, like it would make
like
sense
2 weeks
to me.
ago.
Yeah, seriously, that's the thing. It would make sense to me if the Brotherhood of Steel had rescued him like within the past year before we meet him. But that's not the case. And like it just makes no sense to me. And then like once he kind of gets out into the world, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about him as a character at all. Like at every turn he is either incredibly incompetent or incredibly selfish or both. Like I don't know if he's supposed like at various points he says things that imply that he's trying to pursue some sort of like noble cause, but he doesn't act in ways that support that idea. Like I really have no idea what I'm supposed to think or feel about this character. You guys, how do you feel about him?
Honestly, I feel very similar. I there were a lot of times where I just was like lost on like what where I'm just like you said, like what am I supposed to feel for this guy? Like there's times when I felt uh like I understood him and was kind of he was growing on me, and then like the next scene he would do something, I'd be like, what the dude, what the get
Yeah.
your shit together. So it was really up and down for me. And by the end I don't know that it really changed. It just kept going up and down and stayed at a neutral line.
Yeah, I'm not
Also, he didn't
gonna.
want to have sex with Lucy. What was up with that? Anyway, how's
Well,
that, Cody?
he didn't
No,
he
I'm
didn't want his penis to enlarge and burst. So
yeah, I'm not. No, I'm not gonna. I'm just saying I'm not gonna defend this guy. I also was very confused by this guy from episode to episode, scene to scene. There were moments where I was like, okay, like I'm starting to get behind this guy, and then like Brett said, like real soon after that, it'd just be like, well, that's
Yeah.
out the window. Never mind. We're onto this other thing now. Like I like that he
Well, like
charged in on that one scene in the underground bunker in Vault 4 and like tried to help
yeah,
Lucy, and then
that
was
was
like, oh,
hilarious.
nope.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, is he supposed to just be an idiot? Like, is that what we're supposed to take away from it? I just don't really know how we're supposed to read it.
Yeah, I don't know either.
yeah, I guess I feel like it was it must have been some portion of that is the acting ability, because in some scenes he feels like a soldier, and then in the next scene he's just some doofus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so different. I don't know, it doesn't feel like it could have been really written that way. That's just how it came out.
I will say I wanted his relationship with Thaddeus to work out for them in the end, and that went to shit too. But I was kind of starting to get behind the little bromance that was happening there with him and his
Yeah. I
squire,
mean, I
and
feel
then
like he was an idiot in that situation too. Like,
Mhm.
just be like, dude, so my knight died, and rather than just leave his power armor there, I thought I would, put the suit on and try to continue his mission. Like he could have tried to spin it as being like, I'm doing this all for the Brotherhood, but
Right.
instead he once again is just a freaking idiot.
Yeah, he's just like, oh, you don't understand me, I'll kill you then.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
and
It was
plus he
so
like
quick.
at times is like very seemingly wanting to rise in the Brotherhood, and then at other times he's very much like this is the opposite of what they would ever pick, but I'm going to choose to
Yeah.
do this anyway.
Well, and honestly, like I just well, no, there's just so many things about it that like that don't make sense to me. I mean, honestly, with the number of times that they kept showing that same flashback to him
In the fridge.
coming out of the fridge and seeing the guy in the power armor, I honestly kept waiting for there to be a twist, like by the end of the series, where the Brotherhood of Steel guy like killed his family or something, and he was actually trying to like screw over the Brotherhood, like something interesting. Like I thought that there would, be something compelling about this character by the end of it, and there just wasn't.
Mm. Another thing that really kind of turned me off was like the constant jumping of this camera like inside the helmet to see his face.
Yeah.
And then it was always just it was like one of two things. He was either looking like confused or dumb, or he was looking like mildly amused and like never said anything. And it was like 2 seconds and then back out of the helmet. And it was
Quick
like the same
reaction.
every time. Yeah, every time it was just like, what I wonder what his emotion is. Let's go check. And it's always
That's
the same
hilarious. I didn't even think about that particular, but that's hilarious.
thing.
Yeah.
And they did it a lot. And like
Yeah.
just for comparison, like, it had basically the same situation with Iron Man, and they did that really well. I felt like he's like
Oh yeah.
you see him like talking like in the helmet and like
Oh,
get
yeah.
more like it was like a very similar situation that was done very
It
different.
was like they wanted the viewer to like remember what his real voice sounded like, so the power armor voice didn't confuse you. Don't forget who's in this now.
Right.
That's funny.
Anyway,
Uh,
I thought he was the weak spot of the cast and of the entire show for me.
Even weaker than Hank McClane. Uh-oh.
How dare you?
He
How
was,
dare you?
for the amount of screen time he got, he was serviceable in his role, I would say.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So the I guess let's start with did either of you see that coming, that he was going to end up being essentially the bad guy in the story, or one of the bad guys?
I don't know if I saw that coming, but I was not really super shocked. Like I suspected from basically the first episode that it was not going to be as clear cut as Moldaver was the villain and was like gonna kill her father or something. Like it felt like there was going to be more to the story. Um, I guess I did not really necessarily see his, turn into deep villainy coming.
Did he think he was a villain, though? That's the question.
No, that's fair.
I would say no.
Yeah, I would say no, too.
I don't think any of those Vault-Tec people think that they're the villain.
No. Well, I
Other
mean, I
than-
think his biggest act of villainy was like not really the Vault-Tec thing. It was destroying Shady Sands.
Mhm.
That was an
Basically,
accident. Come on.
basically because he was mad that his wife left him.
Yeah.
Lots of people nuke a city just because they're angry with a nuke that they apparently randomly had acquired from someplace that doesn't fit the plot at
Well,
all.
although,
fine.
I say that was his act of villainy, but I mean, I guess going back to the plot at large, like one of the things we learned in this series, which I believe is new to the Fallout canon, is the fact that Vault-Tec was actually responsible for dropping the bombs.
Mm. Okay, yeah, I didn't know if that was part of
Yeah,
main game storage or not.
I'm
Yeah, I didn't
pretty
either.
sure from what I know, like I believe prior to this, it was at least heavily implied that China was the first to launch the bombs in the game history. So,
Shocking they would change that for a major release.
well, I mean, there's always been like shady stuff going on with Vault-Tec, but I thought it was like very interesting and there was kind of like an oh shit moment for me where we find that out.
Mhm.
So I guess even the fact that he was fairly high up in Vault-Tec means that he was probably not a great person.
Yeah, I felt like the reveal of his true backstory, it was actually really like it was pretty good like emotionally, like it really kind of hit home with a lot of that there. It was definitely a turning point where like I didn't, to that point I didn't, like we knew, kind of like you said, that we knew there was something more to him like going on. He wasn't just some overseer in a vault.
Yeah.
But how far that went the other direction really kind of was a smack in the face, in a good way. It really had a lot of impact to the story for me, is what I'm trying to say.
So if I just throw out this vaguely and say, what did you guys think of Ben's performance? How do you take that question?
I would assume you're talking about Ben Linus.
So what did you think of Ben Linus? Michael Emerson. Shame,
mean, I
shame
don't
that he
know.
wasn't in more of the show. I was really excited when I saw him, but
It was, yeah. It only being in one episode is a shame, unless you count his facial likeness
yeah,
being in the
His
full series.
severed head.
it was actually green screen. He was just resting delicately in people's hands the whole show.
I mean, I like Michael Emerson. I do feel like he just always feels like Ben Linus to me. He just has this kind of like weird, off-putting, nervous energy.
Mhm.
But I mean, I thought he was good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought in the essentially just one episode he was in, I thought he did it really great, and especially the scene where he meets Lucy, in at night there.
oh yeah,
I thought that scene was really cool, and just that it really kind of started to drive home this idea that this world, the surface world, is a really dangerous and really awful place. And because up to that point, we basically all we had seen was the life in the vault, which is kind of happy, everybody's doing great down here. And yeah, I think like just the way his personality, his energy, like you say, is just really kind of ominous, and it really set a good tone,
great
for the rest of the
speech
series
about
going forward.
the cockroaches that he gave her.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I figured you both were going to take that question that way, but actually, I was referring to Ben the Cyclops, played by Chris Parnell.
I mean, I thought he was great too.
So good.
I
I
couldn't
loved him
stare at
in
him.
that.
It was so hard to watch him on screen. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was so odd because the the way they like modeled his face was, like it still had the eye sockets, the two eye sockets, and then the one eye in the middle that was like inset, so it was like
Yeah.
this heavy brow line like covering the one eye, and it was like even just beyond the fact that it was one eye in the middle of his head, it was like even harder to look at beyond that.
That was a messed up
See, that was a
vault they
later
went in.
episode that had a lot of humor in it, Brett. Come on.
No, you're right. No, I didn't say there was none. I just said
That's
it
true.
was
That's
it
the
was a bit
whole
more
I thought he
spaced
was
out.
I thought he was great. I especially loved like when they're going to banish Lucy and she has her hands tied and he's got like the giant sword and like you
I
think he's gonna
sentenced you to
like
death.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's just using this giant like sword to cut the ties to let her go. Like we
Sawing
need to
through
get
it
that
for like 2
sharpened.
minutes.
Yeah.
That was a pretty fun episode.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
Thinking about it more and more now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it was back in a vault, which may
Yeah.
explain some of that. So
Yeah. That's true.
But yeah, I loved him. I mean, we also got a cameo. I mean, first we got a voice, and then we got an actual physical cameo by the one and only Matt Berry, who is one of my favorite performers for a very long time now.
What else has he been in? I felt like I know him, but I couldn't
So
place it.
everybody these days knows him because he's one of the main characters in What We Do in the Shadows, the series.
Oh yes, okay. Yeah.
But I mean, he's been in like a million different British comedies for the past like 20 plus years. He was on The Mighty Boosh. He was in Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. He was in a series called Snuffbox. This is just off the top of my head. I love him as a performer. He's got an amazing iconic voice. I thought he was perfect as the murderous organ harvesting robot.
It was so good. Yeah.
And then I love that we actually see him later as like one of Cooper Howard's actor friends. But yeah, I loved all these little like cameos that happened. And then the other one I have noted here is Fred Armisen,
hmm
who's like the radio host.
Playing what kind of music did he play? It was
It's like some
Fiddle.
kind of weird,
yeah, something weird.
yeah,
Fiddle music.
yeah, like some kind of weird classical something that nobody wants to. But he has all these booby traps set up around his station just because people are trying to kill him because his music's so terrible or something.
Oh yeah, that was fun. Very Walking Dead-ish.
I loved that whole scene. I love the way that we find out that Thaddeus became a ghoul because
Yeah.
he sets off like a booby trap and gets an arrow through his neck. It's like,
It was, yeah.
why am I not
He,
dead right now?
I feel like, I forget the actor's name right off the top of my head right now, but like he just, the way he played that off was was so kind
Yeah.
of like low key funny and like charming and it like
That
really kind
dude
of
is like, I need to find his name.
I really
Johnny
kind of that the
Johnny
character grew
Pemberton.
on me.
Johnny
Yeah,
Pemberton.
through the
He
series, that character
shows,
definitely grew on me.
yeah, he shows up in a lot of things, like I feel like over the past few years, and I feel like he mostly plays these kind of like weaselly characters that you want to hate, but he's so good at it. And like I did actually like I kind of liked him by the end of this season. I honestly kind of felt bad for him.
He was in the Weird Al
Mhm.
story, or the Al Yankovic story. Weird.
Weird
Was
the
he?
L Yank
I
Weird colon the L Yankovic story.
As Johnny Barf. I don't think I've seen anything this guy has been in.
He was in a show called You're the Worst, which I think is one of the greatest sitcom series of probably the past 20 years or so.
I also had not seen a single thing that other guy was in either that I was looking up you were talking about that you liked.
Matt Berry.
Yeah, the only show he's been in at all that I have seen anything of. Oh, technically he's in The Simpsons. I've seen a few episodes of The Simpsons, but not his. But the only thing he was in was Book of Boba Fett, oddly enough, harkening back to podcast one. He
Oh
was the
yeah, didn't he
voice,
voice a droid in that too?
some robot droid. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't even know which
that
one it
makes
was, though.
sense.
Didn't make any sense.
Ooh, I want to say he was Bib Fortuna's like robot butler, basically.
Oh, okay.
When Boba Fett goes to like what was Jabba's palace that Bib Fortuna is now ruling.
How about the role that Eric Estrada did in this series?
That was another one I had on my list. Yeah.
I didn't even notice he
Um,
was in there.
I mean,
Was he actually in it?
Yeah, he
yeah,
was.
yeah. The scene where the ghoul goes up to that farm and like ends up shooting the son, or apparently kills the
Oh
first
my
son and then
God,
kills
I
the
didn't
second
realize that
son.
was him.
Yeah, the dad is
I'm
Eric
looking it
Estrada.
now. Weird.
And the last big cameo that I had written down, because I had recognized there was a bunch as well, so I wrote them down here. The last one I had was Michael Rappaport as Knight Titus, featured in an episode that should have been titled "Fuck, fuck, 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 fuck."
Yeah, the magic word.
I mean, he was great in that role playing an asshole.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
kind of feel like that's just kind of him.
For sure. Yeah, that was good.
Like I honestly kept waiting for Maximus to just shoot him in the head and not just like wait for him to die.
This is like that whole scene. I was like, it was one of those, just going back to our discussion on Maximus, where he's like so
Yeah.
weird. It's like he's just standing there like not helping at all.
Yeah.
And then in the end, it takes one bullet to kill the irradiated bear, which, by the way, that does not happen in the games.
No,
Takes
it sure
way,
doesn't.
way more than one bullet to do that. But yeah, he was like so wishy-washy in that scene. But
Maybe Michael Rappaport had like a dialogue magic number of words he was contracted for, so they had to let him sit there and die.
Let us, I guess, what's next to my notes here? We do you have any just like, I guess, just general other random thoughts from episodes? Like, one thing that occurred to me and my wife also, there's no kids in the vaults. Is that a plot hole? Like, what's going on there? Why do the only child we see in the entire show, like in a vault, is a newborn baby? Like, shouldn't there be like some adolescents somewhere in there?
Well, they say I mean, I feel like Lucy's vault exists basically to create like breeders for the other vaults to, commingle with, which I guess to your point, you would expect there to be more kids because of that, but they also say it's like isn't it a triannual like marriage exchange or something in the first episode?
Right, yeah.
So at least every
Like-
2. Yeah, I think it's 3, they say.
So it sounds like it's not super frequent that they're actually like setting up relationships that could produce children that are not inbred. I don't know.
Hmm.
I mean, that is still a good point, though. It seems like there should be at least, some kids running around.
Hmm.
There's a lot of wonkiness with those vaults in general. Um, may I bring up something from a said article I mentioned before we started?
Yeah, I'm curious about that.
So this has multiple questions about the series in general, but this specific one is about Vault 31, 32, and 33, which we kind of hypothesized back in the last podcast about. But essentially, fact here, I guess, is what we found out. Let's just start over here. What we found out, I guess, is Vault 31 basically had all the Vault-Tec people on ice, essentially, for lack of a better term, that were like
Yeah.
waking up every so often and then being integrated into, and they were taking charge of Vault 32 and 33 as like the overseers, more or less. We find out when they get to Vault 32 that the people there had been dead for 2 years before we are joined in. Even though the people in Vault 31 are technically supposed to be overseeing that vault, so they just didn't check in on it at all for over 2 years, even though they're in charge of that vault and like waking people up to run that vault. And like there was a lot of questions about that, about like why would the killer robot, whatever the killer robot's name was, and then like the people who are on the ice, like essentially like they're not doing what their long-term plan was, like, and the robots seemed very concerned. This part's not in there, it's just me talking, but the robots seemed very concerned with like, these are our objectives and we will meet these objectives by doing this, this, and this with everything as we have it laid out. But like they're not following their own plan, like no one was checking on that.
That's a good point. Like the fact that Vault 32 was essentially like dead, like everything in it was dead, made for a really great plot point,
Yeah.
but it didn't make sense in the grand scheme because exactly like you say, like it immediately after it happened, uh the brain on a Roomba, as it's his official title is in the show, aka Bud Askins, yeah, he should have like immediately set something into motion to like
Yeah, but what
mend that
though?
situation.
I mean, I don't know if I have an answer, and I mean, it is a good question, but like, say, everything escalates in Vault 32. It sounds like it sounds like there's basically like a civil war, or like everybody in Vault 32 just killed each other.
Mhm.
So that happens, assuming Vault-Tec, Bud Askins' bot is aware of this. What could they do about, I mean, to me it seems like maybe they felt like there wasn't a way that they could clean that up and repopulate that vault without alerting the residents of Vault 31 to what happened there. I mean, they could wake up another person to be like a new
Oh, some more
overseer, but
people.
like, are they just gonna go like dispose of all these bodies and stuff themselves? And even if they do, how do they explain to the residents of Vault 31 now where everybody from Vault 32 went? Like, hey, you want to come move into this vault that is mysteriously empty? Like, I don't feel like there is a way that they could have cleaned that up and perpetuated their mission without raising suspicion. So
Well, right, but we also
it would
have,
make sense to me if their solution to that was just to keep it locked down. And what?
but that doesn't make sense either, because the overseer of 33, the lady whose name I'm forgetting now, was also
Betty.
communicating with the robot and also was like receiving orders from the robot, and then also like getting the instructions for the marriage from 32 to 33.
That was all fake though. Lee Moldaver was not actually the overseer of
Right, but how did
Vault
the 33
32.
people know to like open the door and have the ceremony and all that stuff?
She was communicating with them.
Moldaver was from 32 as 32.
Yes.
So she was just being like, hey, it's that time of that year. We should do that thing.
She was basically setting all this up as a way to get into Vault 31 to set her plan in motion.
But the killer robot who's like monitoring stuff wouldn't be aware of the fact that these people have been dead for 2 years, and that 33 who contacts the robot like daily isn't like, hey, we got this wedding coming up, the big exchange every 3 years. And the robot's like, don't do that. That's not us. That wasn't in the plan anywhere. I mean, there's flaws here. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, it's also possible. I mean, we also kind of learn over the course of the series that Moldiver is a genius. Like, she literally invents cold fusion.
Mhm.
So I think it would also be possible because she knows what kind of shit Vault-Tec is both capable of and up to. You know, it's possible that we also learned that, I mean, she had Lucy's mom's Pip-Boy, which would get her access to a lot of stuff. So it's possible that she managed to like hack into stuff and communicate with Bud Askins' bot and like just make it seem like everything was fine.
So how did
Could
this is
see that as
related question here? How did Hank not recognize who she was when they met in the vault in episode 1?
He
Because he's
did.
like,
He said, "I think I know you." Or,
yeah,
I think I
like
know who you are.
I think I know who you are, but like he knew, like he talked to her name to name in the past, and they went into the program together, and they were both frozen together, and they were in the house at the parties.
We don't know that she was part of that program. We don't know how she survived. Because in the
Yeah.
flashback, she doesn't seem to be buddy with Vault-Tec.
Yeah, she wasn't in Vault-Tec to my understanding.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So we don't really know that.
Oh, I apologize. I'm misreading what they're saying here. Yes.
But
This says,
Hank,
how did a surface dweller trick the Vault-Tec folks into thinking that she was the overseer of 32? And how was Hank in particular tricked by her when we find out later that they actually knew each other? So you're correct, but that raises the bigger problem, which is then he should have known that she wasn't part of the program as soon as he saw her, but instead they go through like a whole wedding ceremony.
he would have known
Yeah.
he would have known intimately the overseer of Vault 32, presumably.
And yes,
Because
and
the
you're-
vault
That is
that person would have been friends with him before the apocalypse.
and if she wasn't part of the crew that was frozen, then he should have also known that, especially
true.
since he knew her face to face, like, and you know,
Yeah, that part is kind of an issue, I feel like.
I mean, she was kind of a
Yeah.
mysterious character that we didn't talk about her per se, but I did enjoy her as a character.
Mhm.
Just popping a few other things I had on this. So, was there actually ever a plan? This is just me kind of looking at something they had been talking, but was there actually ever a plan for them to like repopulate the surface, or was this all BS to just keep them in the vaults forever?
No, I mean, this is, based on the games, but Vault-Tec basically, like, in the games, every vault is basically just a different experiment. And I mean, we kind of see that in the one scene in the flashback where there's like the gathering of the heads of all these different corporations.
Yeah.
And Vault-Tec is like, oh, you can do whatever you want with your vault. And they start throwing around these ridiculous ideas of like experiments they could do. Like, that is very much part of the games. And I've been replaying Fallout 4, and I'm pretty sure in that there's actually like, much like Lucy's brother in this show, how he, goes through all these computer consoles and like finds all these logs and stuff. Like, that's part of the games. Like, you in all the different vaults, that's kind of how you like learn the history of what has happened there. Um and I forget if it's the vault I started in or a different vault, but there's actually there's orders in the I think it is in the vault you started in Fallout 4. There are orders in the spoiler alert for Fallout 4. But in the overseer's terminal in the vault you start in, there are instructions from Vault-Tec, and among those instructions it says, even if you hear broadcasts from like the US government or military or some other like authority saying that there's an all clear and it's safe to come out, ignore those and do not emerge from the vault until you hear from Vault-Tec because they may have been compromised. So Vault-Tec like very much has its own agenda and is lying like even to the overseers that it put in positions of power.
They had a couple questions on this website too about the Enclave, which I feel like is a non. I don't know if this is in the games or not, but it sure wasn't in the TV show a lot as far as them using this term Enclave. It was kind of thrown out in like two or three spots, I think,
There
during the
was,
seasons
yeah, so
or
that's
season.
it's weird to me that they didn't explain that like even a little bit more because Michael Emerson's character is supposed to be a scientist working for the Enclave. And in the world of the games, the Enclave is basically the remnants of the US government. So it is
Okay.
like officially, at least it sees itself as still being kind of like the seat of power in post-apocalyptic America.
Hmm.
Um, and so the fact that he was working for them and escaped from them is interesting, but it's weird to me that they did not even remotely explain what the Enclave was for people who are not familiar with the games.
Yeah, I was surprised as well that there was zero explanation as to what that meant.
Isn't that the
But
place they're headed to at the end, or am I wrong on that?
So at the very end of the series, after Hank McClane runs off in power armor, we see him stop at like a vista overlooking a city, which I didn't even catch this at first. I don't know how I
I
didn't, but
did. How did you not?
I don't know. I was
I,
tired and half paying
I didn't
attention.
even play that game. I knew it.
Anyway, it's New Vegas, which is the setting
Oh,
of one of the Fallout games. That it's basically Las Vegas, but in the
'cause wasn't
post-apocalypse.
there like a little Eiffel Tower or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
saw that and I
Um,
was like, is that supposed to be? I don't know these, but
well, there's also, I mean, it's interesting to like there's also a nod to New Vegas in that scene where there's like the heads of the different companies meeting before the apocalypse.
hmm.
Because one of the people at that table is almost certainly I believe it's Robert House, who is like the main kind of driving antagonist behind the New Vegas game. And he is the head of Robco Industries, and we see him at that table with the plaque in front of him saying Robco Industries. So I thought that was going to be the only kind of reference to New Vegas they're going to plant in there, but then they show the town at the end. So,
Mhm.
and I think at this point they've officially confirmed that much of season two is going to be set in New Vegas. So
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was a really cool nod to fans. Just for a brief history, as I understand it. So New Vegas was developed by a studio called Obsidian and not directly by Bethesda.
Correct.
And so there are a number of fans who essentially say that New Vegas is not canon to the story because it wasn't the story wasn't developed by Bethesda, so it can't be their story. It's a separate thing.
Yeah.
Although,
And it was kind of like a spin-off of Fallout 3.
hmm,
It came out between Fallout like I think a year or so, like pretty quickly after Fallout 3. But well before Fallout 4, so it's not like a numbered entry of the series. But go on, Brad.
mhm. Well, I was gonna say, to my understanding, like Bethesda has never like I think people tried to make it out as like, oh, Obsidian like stole this game from them, and but Bethesda was never like that. They were like, okay, yeah, cool, good. They were all good with it, and has never been like they have never shed any like shadow or anything on the game.
Yeah.
It's just all just kind of like this fan made thing.
Well, it's funny too because earlier in this series, people were basically speculating that they were destroying New Vegas from the canon because there are like three or four different main factions in New Vegas, one of which is the NCR, the New California Republic, and the capital of the NCR was Shady Sands.
Yeah, that's another thing they had on
And
this article.
so there was some controversy about that as far as the timeline of whether or not Shady Sands getting nuked would like basically say that New Vegas couldn't have happened.
Hmm.
But they have officially come out and said that that's not the case, that New Vegas is canon. And if there was like a timeline slip up in the series, it was just a mistake.
Yeah, which totally understandable given it was a different studio that
Yeah.
made the game. So
Yeah, this article has some questions in here, and I don't know the game stuff enough to understand some of this. This is on GameSpot, by the way, if you're looking for this. But sorry, I should have said it before. But they talk about a little bit about like where did the New California Republic go? The capital was nuked. Like presumably there would have been more than just that one city. So shouldn't they have still been controlling that area more or less after that happened? Since nobody else seemed to move in on that. And then we have like the classroom stuff where we see some of that as well, but we don't really see any sign of that above the surface anywhere.
Yeah.
The Enclave they mentioned in here, like I said, just a couple times as far as like why they don't, the person who wrote this said they don't know if that Welzig, I guess that's Ben Linus's character, Michael
Yeah.
Emerson. They don't did the act this is insinuating that they never actually said that where he was working was Enclave related. I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Well,
But
I believe in the first episode when they're like first presenting the bounty, at least someone says that he escaped from the Enclave.
I think it's Honcho.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
It is. Um, but then the question they're asking here, I guess, is like, why would the Enclave have Vault-Tech's cold fusion tech to begin with? That's what he steals and he runs away with. That's why they all want the head. But why would he have that? Why would they have that to begin with?
That's a good
Especially
question.
since you have to have the Vault-Tech code to make it work to begin with. So it would have been doing them no good
Yeah, we
having
don't.
them there the whole time.
Maybe we will get some backstory on a
I
Vault Tech member
I
defecting to
would
the
bet
Enclave
that
or
that will
something.
be expanded on in season 2. I hope so anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something else in here. I thought, this one's kind of weird. Like, what was the ghoul's motivation here with the head exactly? Why did he want that head so bad as a bounty? Like,
I th- I think it was just a way for him to get to Moldaver.
Yeah,
that's basically what it says here. But why did he want to do that? Is the question they're asking. Like
because
first,
he be I mean I think he knew who she was, and
but we've already established in our conversations that she was not part of Vault-Tech, ergo would not have been related to his wife or his family. And he's clearly not in it for the cold fusion code because why the hell would he need that?
One thing that just occurred to me was so there's the scene where the ghoul gets like abducted by the guy who's calling himself the president of
yeah,
the government. And he sees like the wanted poster on the wall and he like recognizes the face and he says, "Oh, I remember her differently" or something. And it feels, maybe I read that differently, but it felt like he didn't have that face tied to the name Moldaver before that. So
yeah, that's true.
would he like there's might be a disconnect there on whether or not he would have known that Moldaver was somebody that he
That's true because she
had a
was going
connection
as
to his
like
family.
Miss Williams, I think, or something.
Yeah,
Back when he knew her.
that's right.
That's a good point.
There's also a question here of like if he just wanted to find Moldaver, which they're not convinced is the logical explanation for his actions in this season, but he could have just basically let Lucy lead him to her and just followed Lucy rather than go through all the hassle of like the head and Lucy and all these other things.
There could have been easier ways to do that, it
Yeah,
seems like.
that's true.
Yeah, because essentially that's probably what he's doing at the end, I'm assuming, is letting like her dad go and then like somehow he'll track him. I don't know, but I don't know.
I guess I'm just hoping that a lot of this stuff will be clarified in the future.
Will Vault 33 run out of water?
Um,
Just steal the Vault 32 chip.
one thing that I was left really curious on was what is the story with CX404, otherwise known as dog meat?
I was
It's-
curious about that too.
So he's like clearly they're experimenting on these dogs. They're like doing something. And my assumption is they're like uh breeding in and like adapting like certain abilities like radioactive like resistance or extra strength or something, but we never see anything manifest out of that. And also, he seems pretty wishy-washy for a trained dog. Like he's just like, oh, any master will do. As long as you're like somewhat kind to me, I'll follow you around.
He's
Which I
a
thought was kind
friend
of
dog.
interesting.
He does go along with anybody that's there, but yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Which I mean, I still loved having him in the series because
I don't think the dog was the
he's a good
problem here.
boy. But no.
Actually, it says it's a girl.
I do really want to I was really wondering like what his abilities could possibly be. But
Yeah, I wondered about that too. I don't think they really give us anything to go on in the show though.
yeah.
I can't even speculate on that. I don't know.
I mean, there are what are they called? In the games, there are like basically weird robot dog hybrids, cyber dogs, which actually appear in New Vegas, and in some of the DLC where they're like I don't they look like dogs with human brains, but I think maybe it's supposed to be like I don't know if it's supposed to be just like an exposed dog brain, but they're like dogs that have like some cyborg like robotic parts and then like a clear dome with their brain inside it. But they're like German shepherds, so maybe that's something that they're trying to set up with these dogs they're experimenting on. I don't know.
Okay. Let's see here. Oh, another question, possible plot hole, and this is actually like a Fallout universe wide plot hole for me. The fact that radiation decay doesn't take hundreds of years to become livable and like unhealthy for you. What do you make of that in the show and also just this, the IP in general? Like there's like water on the ground that's like completely radioactive hundreds of
So
years later after
I was going to mention that when we watched the first episode because I looked it up. Isn't it like 30 years or something? Basically, the Earth would be fine again.
I don't have a firm number on that, but yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
like less than 50 years.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if that is something they ever actually address in the games. It's a good question.
It's interesting that they choose that amount of years anyway. As somebody who hasn't played the games, just from the fact of like if this is like set in 50s-ish kind of vibe going on, and then the idea is like the world basically has stopped its progress for the most part on the surface. Like the amount of years that they jump ahead at that point really doesn't matter because then you're going into like where we as humans are not at anyway. So your viewers slash game players would be pure speculation as far as what they would find anyway. And since nothing else on the surface is really progressing along, like the number of years almost seems kind of arbitrary. So I don't know why they would choose, other than to be flashy and be like, it's 200 years in the future. I don't know why they would do that actually.
Probably, I mean, for the purpose of the show, like they had to like stuff it somewhere into the timeline, and like I forget now where this falls. I know we talked about it in the first episode, but
In the Fallout in the timeline of the like game series,
yeah, Yeah.
So the show is set, I believe, 9 years after Fallout 4. So the show is actually the furthest point in the franchise now.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, like, you could easily say like the games they had like huge time gaps just to be flashy, and then like they made the show and they're like, oh well, I guess we gotta keep following with
Yeah.
that.
I mean, the only explanation I can think as far as like why have it be that far out is like if it's based on like the conception of, nuclear war in the 1950s, maybe that's how people thought back then.
Mm,
Like maybe there was just an idea that if it happened, it would just be nuclear wasteland forever, basically. I don't know.
okay.
I mean,
That's just a
Yeah.
guess, but
it's
Yeah,
probably
no,
it
it's
kind of
probably
makes
get
good
sense to
behind
science
me.
that.
to assume that the further out you go, the better the Earth might be when you came back out.
Yeah.
But especially if you like sand. I watched Dune today, so a lot of sand.
Not a saint.
A lot of sand. All right, what else we got?
I had so I found like several like really great quotes to the series. Did you guys have any that you noted down that you just really enjoyed?
Hmm.
I just have okie dokie.
Right.
That was recurring and enjoyable every time. Um, I like belly laughed like for an extended period. The scene where Maximus and Thaddeus come upon Wilzig's headless body, and they're like, "Is that him?" Oh no, hold up the picture of his face next to the body, and Thaddeus says, "Oh yeah, that's definitely him." I laughed so hard at that one. Oh, I was like, one of my favorite moments of the whole series.
I'm trying to think of some. There were some good ones I remember, but I'm trying to think what it was.
I mean,
Um,
the whole Maximus not understanding sex thing did make me laugh.
yeah.
It swells up
Um,
like a giant pimple and yeah.
they had the ghoul had a great reference to the games saying, "Thou shalt get sidetracked by bullshit every goddamn time," which is most certainly a thing that happens in the games.
It's true.
I also had Thaddeus Thaddeus telling a story of before he was in the Brotherhood, and he was on a fly farm, I believe he says, and his job was a shitter, and so they just fed him, and he just would shit, and then the flies would come to the shit, and that somehow there was some sort of farming going on, and then the last end of that line was, "That's why I'm so fat." Like, oh my
Me too,
goodness,
Thaddeus. Me
that's
too.
so ridiculous.
I'm
Um,
trying to think of something. Not coming up with any at the moment here.
and they did get in the famous line, and Moldaver got it in the series here of war never changes. Which is
I
great.
was a little disappointed that they didn't get Ron Perlman in here somehow to say that, but
Mm-hmm. That would have been really cool.
but I was glad they at least got it in there.
Yeah, I think it would that would have been like fun fan service, but I think it had more impact probably with her saying
Yeah,
it.
it would have felt maybe a little too forced if he just popped up and said that.
Yeah. Well, unless you guys have any other just general thoughts on it, I did want to ask. Oh, there's one other thing that I want to pop in here too with it. I thought the end credits, the episodes are really cool. I don't know if
Yeah.
you guys noticed. I mean, obviously, you would have noticed that they were different for each episode. Did you notice that nearly all of the end credits had some sort of hint to the next episode?
I'll be honest, I didn't actually watch all the end credits.
I didn't watch any end credits. I noticed the intro title screen changed, everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was fun to do.
I did not catch if that was a Easter egg to the episode that was to come or what. Just I didn't really pay attention consistently across them all, but I did notice it changed.
Mm,
I did watch the end credits for the final episode, which had some fun New Vegas-y stuff in them, but
it did, yeah.
other than that, I didn't really
Yeah.
watch
And,
it.
and I didn't, it was kind of like in rewatching, because I rewatched nearly all the episodes just to refresh my mind to to do this tonight. But it's a lot more noticeable when you know what the next episode is about and you
Mm.
see the credits roll and you're like, oh. So
Like, what
that
kind of
was
stuff
pretty
are they
cool.
showing in there? You talking pictures or what?
Uh yeah, so the credits are essentially like a um it's like a zoom out through like landscapes.
Oh, okay.
Like you start with like a something like from the current episode, typically. Like one of the main features, a building, something, a billboard, and then it like zooms back through all these other things, and like often there'd be like in the one there was a billboard for like the Super Duper Mart, and like the
Okay.
next episode was the one that was focused in the Super Duper Mart, things like that.
That was a unique locale compared to the rest of the show.
Mm.
So what's that actor's name who's was one of the two people on the couch? I don't know his name, but he was in
Oh,
Lemony Snicket Unfortunate Events as well. Guys, kind of a schlub in everything he plays, but
right.
I didn't really
Yeah.
buy that those two guys on that couch were running that place, but that's okay. It's
That's fair. To get back to where I was going with my commentary there. Do you have any predictions for the next season, or just like what you would like to see? Any thoughts on that? Because they have it has um words fail me. They are signed for a second season officially. Um, so anything you think are going to happen on the
I don't know if I necessarily have like speculation as to what we might get, but I mean, going back to the New Vegas of it all, it's going to be interesting because kind of the main narrative thrust of New Vegas is that you ultimately have to side with one of the various factions to
mm,
get base to essentially take control of New Vegas. Um, and so I feel like in the show they're going to have to make a decision as to like what the canonical choice in that was.
mm,
So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Unless they just I mean, since I think this season is set like 13 years or something after the events of New Vegas. So I guess it's possible they could sidestep that somehow and just say like they all killed each other in the interim or something like that.
put a new
Um,
faction in, say they won.
yeah, but I
mm,
am
yeah.
curious to see how they play that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything you guys like want to see or questions you think you need to have answered or
I mean, I
anything?
think there's some stuff that has to happen in season two, such as like what becomes of the vault dwellers? Are they staying down in 32 or 33 at this point? Or are they coming back out? Or is the secret of 31 kind of like going to make them rise to the surface or feel used and go up? So I think that's one thing that has to happen. I hope for the ghoul's sake that we get some kind of follow up to his wife and daughter, but I don't know. Problem
Yeah.
with that is I don't know what they're going to come up with as a plot device that I'm anticipating being satisfied with is my current issue with that. I've been thinking about like I don't think it's realistic that they're alive still, but maybe they're alive still because she was in on Vault-Tec too, and we just saw all these people were frozen. So
I mean, she was not in Vault 31.
okay,
I checked the list that they showed when Lucy's brother was messing with the computer, and her name
Oh,
was
yeah.
not on it.
Smart. Yeah,
but
I think it's probably a very safe bet that we're going to get more backstory from the ghoul, specifically with his wife and daughter, and I'm definitely
Yeah.
very interested to see that. I think that's um they say that hopefully will open up his character even more and make him even more interesting than he already is.
I mean we'll have to see some faction, I think, that is like capable of standing up to the Brotherhood because I feel like they're going to be back, obviously, for season two. And
Right, and they have control of Cold Fusion now, so they are going to be
Yeah.
a major player probably a target by someone else. They probably will then at that point bring in the Enclave fully.
That
I
would
would
make
guess.
sense. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean that's one thing that I feel like we don't really get a sense of, at least in this first season, is that in the world of the game, there are like a number of fairly powerful factions that are all, vying for control of, if not specific regions, the country at large.
Which I
But,
guess I
the
do appreciate that, just from like overwhelming the viewer too much in season one type
yeah,
thing.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, and I'm sure they will introduce more of that in future seasons, but the Brotherhood of Steel is not the be all and end all of, militaristic factions in this world.
They can't even beat a bear.
It's true. I mean, speaking of the Brotherhood of Steel, if we're to assume that, next season follows along from this finale, it looks like Maximus is probably going to actually be a knight now.
Does seem that way.
They give him credit for killing Moldaver and basically saving the day. Which what did I don't know how you guys feel about this. I heard someone speculate that I think Dane is like his friend who got his foot like razored up, and
Yeah.
I've heard speculation that maybe Dane is like actually working for like another entity or something, and is like somehow, like, for some reason purposely trying to get Maximus to move up, because I mean we find out that Dane faked their own injury, or I mean not faked, but like caused their own injury,
Mhm.
which then in turn allowed Maximus to become a squire in the first place. And now, like at the end, when they show up after the shit goes down, Dane immediately is like, "Hail, Knight Maximus!" Blah blah blah. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's enough to really support it, but I think it's interesting to
Hmm.
think that like maybe there's another force at play trying to get him up through the ranks.
Yeah. He seems to keep falling upward
Yeah.
despite his best efforts to be terrible.
I don't know what the
Yeah,
end game on that would
that
be,
could
but
be
it's
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe now that he's a knight, he'll get into the shit and get killed in like the first episode. I wouldn't mind that.
That'd be funny. Chet's back on the menu, buddy.
All right. Any other thoughts you have in general before we probably we could get into our ratings here, I'm guessing.
Oh, I had a quick question just from the games because I haven't played them. Why is the bottle cap the currency in this world?
I believe the official explanation is that it is a finite resource and is hard to replicate with like the technology available after the apocalypse.
Okay, that oddly works for me. So okay, I mean, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
My only final thought is, if you get your foot crushed by someone in a giant mech suit, do not let some random shiftless hobo in a like fucked up shack give you medicine, give you what he claims is medicine.
Dirty chicken fucker.
This thing, if he had taken the other bottle, boy. It did heal though. I mean,
It's true.
He
did what he
wasn't
said.
lying.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, he wasn't lying.
Right.
All right. Well, are we ready to get into some ratings then?
Let's do it.
Yeah. Let's do it.
All
Guess I
right.
got things are rating then.
Indeed.
Okay.
I guess I'll just jump in here first. So I feel like we talked about it's with the first episode, but just the fact that they seem to have like really nailed the vibe of the this whole world, and all the people in it, and that definitely carried for me throughout the series. Like I there wasn't it felt true to it, throughout. I felt that there was a lot of really like just entertaining parts in general. Um, a lot of good humor, good dialogue, and when it did get to a point to me for me when it was like they kind of dialed back the humor and had some more drama, that was really good as well. Like it was really enjoyable. It was like interesting kind of plot points and different angles people were going. Um I am I'm really curious to see where these factions are going to go, yeah, in season 2. I say especially with the Brotherhood taking control of Cold Fusion, where that's going to go. We've got Moldaver is dead. Lucy and the Ghoul are traveling together. Norm presumably puts himself in his hibernation, though we don't know that for sure. But it was really good. We didn't talk about it yet, but just his character arc was really cool to see that he like kind of like found his way in this world and seems to be like
Yeah.
a main kind of character now.
But actually, I think that was, didn't Dave raise concern about that in the first
He did.
episode? It seemed like he
Yep.
had an issue with the fact that he was kind of like a, he
He
seemed
like
like he was being set up to be like a small,
yeah
inconsequential,
called himself a chicken.
Dave also
Yeah.
thought they weren't going to go back into the vaults after episode 1, and I was like, "What are you talking about?"
That's true. I do remember that conversation. Um, and like the final twist of seeing New Vegas there in the last shot episode, was really cool. I think they're setting up this world really well to be bigger than what we've seen so far. Like they've set it up well to to expand on things. And yeah, I'm really excited to see where this goes. I enjoyed every episode throughout. I wouldn't say they were all amazing, but they were as a whole. I felt it was a really great entry, especially for like a video game adaptation, which we haven't had a lot of really great adaptations. So I hadn't thought of this beforehand, as I usually don't, but um I gave the first episode a 9, and I think I probably the series as a whole, I think I would also give a 9.
Wow.
I think it was really well done. Um, other than a few possible plot holes that we talked about tonight, I honestly don't really have any issues with anything they did. Um, other than like maybe a couple of characters that may or may not, whether or not they're written that way or they're just were poorly acted, I don't know. But yeah, overall, I'm very excited to see another season of this and see where they go. So
The 9 out of 10, huh?
mm-hmm.
Cody, do you want to go?
Yeah, I can go next. I gave this a 6.75 on the intro episode. There were a lot of things I enjoyed. I would say from our conversations tonight, a lot of like weird kitschy side characters and moments I did enjoy quite a bit. I thought Lucy's character was pretty good through the episodes. Agreeing with all of you, I think Maximus was kind of weirder and weaker, and I had more issues with the Ghoul than I think sounds like most people did. But I think as the outsider again on this one, just kind of I mentioned in that first episode, like trying to reconcile the weird tonal shifts between comedy and drama that the series now has gone through each episode. I got more used to that as it went, I would say. So I probably got like the vibe they were going for more than I did in the first episode by itself. At times there was still some moments where it kind of caught me off guard, but in general, I think it worked okay. There's some intrigue here for sure, as far as maybe some of the questions we're going to get in season 2, and finding some of the answers, I think, as the season went along and ended here in season 1. We didn't even mention the dinner guest at the final banquet there
We
with
did not talk about Rose at all.
Oh,
yeah.
boy.
So that was kind of a scene as well. But I'm actually pretty excited for where this one would go. So I'm a little higher on it than I was when I started. Probably not as high as Joe, but I'm going to put this about 7.5, I would say. So I came up a little bit. That's about where I'm at. I did ask
Nice.
my wife what she thought of this. She said, I enjoyed it. I said, what number would you? No, I think her quote was, I enjoyed it. Please don't ask me to put a number on it for your podcast.
She
So
knows you well.
I guess there's that.
Well, I might not be quite as high on it as you would expect, Cody.
3.2.
No, I'm pretty high on it. I agree with pretty much everything Brett said. I continue to be amazed at how well they captured the tone and feeling of the games. Like I said, I liked the vast majority of the casting. I thought it was just perfectly cast for the most part, well acted. I am super excited to see what happens in season two. I thought that they actually take a quick step back. I One of my favorite things about this season is that they actually answered most of the questions that they asked. They paid off most of the mysteries they set up.
Yes, I meant to actually say that specifically, and I forgot to. So thank you.
But I mean, especially given that Jonah Nolan and Lisa Joy are involved in running this show, and they did Westworld, which I loved, but in Westworld they relied a little too much on the mystery box and asking more questions than they answered. Um, and I really appreciated that in this season of television, they managed to set up a number of compelling questions and mysteries, but that they actually paid most of them off by the end. But I do think that there are, some good lingering questions for the future that, I'm looking forward to seeing explored. All that being said, if it wasn't for the character of Maximus, I probably would have given this a 9 out of 10 as Brett did. But because he is unfortunately such a big part of this show,
One
and
third. Let's keep that in mind when you're downgrading from your 9.
I don't think he is fully 1/3 of the show. I mean, Lucy still very much feels like the main character. But I do feel like I have to subtract a little bit just because he is such a glaring issue in this series for me. So I ended up giving this a score of 8 out of 10.
All right. Well, still solid numbers all around, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Well, I guess that wraps up our discussion here. This has been another episode of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. And yeah, I guess I won't go into our whole spiel with that. But if you enjoyed our discussion, if you haven't listened to our first episode impressions, go ahead and back and do that because we had even more hosts on that one. It was a good discussion on that one as well. And you want to go ahead and if this is our first episode listening to us, go ahead and check out some of our other content because we got a lot of stuff out there on various different topics and subjects. So
It's true.
but we'll take us out tonight with this thought.
Oh boy.
Now mutations are like really common in the Fallout world, and like not just mutant creatures, but like are essentially monsters. But like your own character can often gain like a mutation or two, like ability like mid game. So Cody, if you were in the world of Fallout and your mutation was to grow an extra body part, for example, a second nose or a
Oh,
third
no.
hand, which extra body part would you want and why?
So it has to be an extra body part. It can't be one I don't have already.
Correct.
Okay. Well, that's going to be easy then. It's going to be a second dick right above my butt. Done.
Why right above your butt?
That way I can have a lady on top and bottom go at the same time. I'm just saying. Any higher up the body and it throws off the center of balance. I'm just saying it'd be hard to operate then. But anyway.
Understandable. Okay.
Yeah.
But what if the side effect of that mutation was that your extra body part, your extra penis, had its own tiny brain and internal thoughts?
Ooh.
It would be like, damn, it smells shitty over here.
Probably would be. I was just thinking how hard it'd be to go to the bathroom at that point too, wouldn't you? Maybe I made a poor choice here. And it might be thinking also I made a poor choice here.
I mean, you could
But-
just like sit down.
Yeah, I guess so. But just think of like, I don't know, like going to even moving your pants would be a lot harder than it used to be. If I had a second penis and it had a brain of its own, it probably would be asking itself, what would the season 1 of Fallout have been like if the ghoul had been played by Chris Parnell? That's the question.
My goodness.
One-eyed ghoul Chris Parnell.
Very different indeed.
Would you refer to your new extra penis as the one-eyed ghoul?
No. I'd call him the Brotherhood of Steel.
And with that, we are
we
out
can't post this
tonight.
episode.
This is a good spot to end right there. So
Oh,
thank you all
boy.
for listening. We are out. Good night.
Yep. Bye, everybody.
Bye.